Welcome to this brief explanation of what WeThrive does and how it does it. Our aim at WeThrive is to help organizations, managers and staff work well and enjoy their work wherever they're doing it, which should be a win-win for all concerned. In the next 9 minutes, I'm going to explain briefly how WeThrive goes about helping organizations to achieve that. Now, one way to define what really good work will be like is to ask people what they remember about the best work they ever did. And we've asked many thousands of people that question, and they always say the same sort of things. The precise words may change, but the meaning always includes these sorts of ideas. People want to know exactly what they're supposed to be doing, why they're doing it, and who for. They want to have the knowledge, skills, and resources to carry the work out well. They want to feel competent and to be acknowledged for what they've done. At a social level, they want to feel part of something and for that thing to be useful. Many of these, of course, become more difficult with remote working. But how do we know if people are getting these kinds of experiences out of their work or not? Many companies just don't, and that's where WeThrive comes in really useful. And it goes further than that. It not only shows what people's experience of work is like, it also generates analysis and coaching plans to help improve it. It provides learning resources to help managers and staff alike to actually carry out the improvement work, and then it helps you to track what's being done to make working life better. This is important because every organization wants its people to be intelligent and collaborative and able to communicate, especially now in the knowledge working era and when people are not necessarily in the same room. Those things are vital if you want people to be able to contribute well to the working life of the organization and if you want them to stay with you and give of their best. We know that when those conditions are met, people are more productive. They're more likely to stay in the organization. They're much less likely to go sick. But none of them are givens. In fact, our abilities in the areas of communication, collaboration, and simple intelligence vary widely from moment to moment throughout the day. The reasons for this are complicated and largely biological. Now, this is only a model and it's a huge simplification, but it's still useful to think of the human brain as being in 3 layers. If you imagine that up at the top of your head you've got all the modern functions like language and logic, and the sense of proportion that you need for complex decision-making. Think of that as the thinking brain, if you like. Then there's an emotional brain, which handles our social interconnections. And that, of course, underpins the great majority of the interactions between us because we are a social species. We need to be together and working in groups. And then underneath that, there's another little brain altogether, the amygdala, which handles the stress reflex and the fight and flight mechanism. Now, when the whole brain's reasonably calm, we're able to use the thinking brain, which is pretty important for knowledge workers. But as stress mounts and the brain starts to feel pressured or under threat, more primitive areas start to take over. We can actually become less intelligent, less able to communicate and less collaborative, less able to do creative thinking and solve problems, less able to do all the things that the business is actually paying us for. We become more selfish, more likely to defend territory and build silos. And in the longer term, stressed people become ill. Stress is now the number 1 cause of lost working time after coughs and colds. So we need an understanding of what people find stressful, even the things that we're not aware of being stressful at work, because then we could measure those things and see how people are doing in those areas and help them acquire knowledge, develop skills and change working practices so that they feel better. And when they feel better, they'll not only work better, they'll be more likely to stay with the organization in the longer term, and as I say, there'll be fewer sick days, and productivity goes up as well. This is how we do that at WeThrive, using the 4C model, which finds out where work-related stress is coming from by asking a number of broad questions to find out where the opportunities for improving people's difficulties are, and then zooming in to get more detail. As you can see, it's divided into causes and effects. We don't think the items in blue can normally be addressed directly. They're more likely to be consequences of things further upstream. So we encourage people always to start upstream with the causes of the difficulties and frustrations people have at work. Let's go through it area by area, starting with the cognitive area, which is all about what you know about your company and your job, how far that knowledge is shared, and whether the team are able to cooperate because they're all on the same page with that sharing of ideas. WeThrive will ask how much of the time people are really clear about how the company and its customers benefit from their work, how often they're completely clear about the performance expected from them, and how much of the time they feel the team understand each other and the work they're doing, and consequently, how often they think the team is actually cooperating. All this terminology can be changed, so you could have patients, students, or anything else you like instead of customers, depending on the sector that you're in. In the next area of the model, we want to know whether people have the things they need to do their job well and whether they're getting the benefits of doing so. So we ask, how much of the time do you feel you have all the necessary background information for your work? How much of the time do you feel you have all the necessary skills? And how often do you feel you have all the support and resources that you need? Now, hopefully, if everything's running well so far, people will be feeling pretty good about the way they do their work. But we will check by asking how often they go home feeling a sense of competence and achievement at work, because if they're not, something needs doing quickly, because that's a crucial motivator in every modern model of motivation. Now we check on the social interactions, because while we think of social life as being something separate from work, people talk about a work-life balance, which is nonsense. Work is a crucial part of life, and you're still alive while you're at work. Work itself is actually primarily a social experience for almost everybody. So we need to know, how often do you feel you're being given enough attention? How much are you exchanging attention, interacting with other people at work? Because people become upset and don't work well if they're feeling isolated or ignored. We want to know how often you feel some sort of common bond with other people in the company, sharing ideas and team spirit, feeling part of something bigger than yourself, because as you may well remember from your own working life, those are the moments when a team becomes more than the sum of its parts and starts to do wonderful things. And then how often do you feel your contributions being acknowledged by others? Because, again, recognition is a massive motivator, and it's one of those things that always comes up when we ask people what they remember about the best work they've ever had. And it's also one of the things that most companies simply don't do well enough. Finally, back to that blue area, the effects of what's been going on previously. It's a set of questions which are really about well-being, indicators of how sustainable work is going to be. How much of the time do people feel secure at work? How much of the time they feel in control of events? Do they have the necessary time and space to clear the head when they need to? Because we can't work continuously. We need to decompress, otherwise we don't learn. How much are people worrying about work? And finally, how meaningful is it? This is one of the big questions that we don't generally ask, but it's vital to sustained motivation and satisfaction at work. So that's the top level view of what happens in the first stage of WeThrive, the first page of the survey questionnaire, getting the data on who's feeling what and why, even about things that aren't necessarily conscious, but that affect people's ability to join in and work well. And crucially, we can get this information from the employee's perspective. Even if you use the one-to-one version of WeThrive, which about half our customers do, you can get it from the individual employee's perspective as well, because we do offer the option of non-anonymous questionnaires. And as I say, about half our customers use that. And the detail, the exquisite detail you get from that is just extraordinary, because it puts you in a position as a line manager to talk to people one-to-one about their particular perspective on work and to talk about areas that people have never considered discussing before, because, as I say, some of the questions that we ask relate to things that you're not even normally conscious of in working life. But this is only the start, because employers need the maximum possible detail, but with the minimum possible impact on employee time. So WeThrive asks those 16 top-level questions and then zooms in on the areas where help is most needed, asking supplementary questions to get even more detailed information. You can also, of course, add your own custom questions to WeThrive to add company-specific or sector-specific questions, or even to run pulse surveys of your own devising if you want to. What happens next is that you get a dashboard showing completion rates, overall scores, and how many follow-up actions are in progress and completed, plus charts showing the scores for the whole organization and every possible subgroup, right down to individual level if you're using that facility, which, as I say, about half our customers do. Then there's a reports page for making detailed comparisons between different groups and for pulling out the free text that people put in during the survey. This background information in the free text responses really illuminates the reasons for the highs and lows in the scores, and there is real gold in there for people who want to understand why people act as they do. The real magic, of course, happens when you drill down to smaller groups, because that's where the real detail is. So let's look at a group of 4 people looking at their experience of work through the 4C model. In some areas, their experience is pretty similar and positive, but in others, their lives are very different. And we really want to be able to help the people who are reporting lower scores in those areas if we possibly can, because that can't be comfortable for them. They won't be doing their best work. They might leave or go sick more, and they won't be representing the organization positively to friends or customers. As I said, some people use the individual version of WeThrive, others don't. It's about 50-50. Companies that do use the individual version get higher response rates, more free text explanation, and more commitment to following through and finding solutions for the issues that have been identified. But some companies don't do that. They don't feel ready for it. They use the team version, which allows you to drill down just to groups of 4. And as I say, ideally you'd get down to 4 if you can. The smaller the group, the more interesting the detail on how managers can actually be helpful and useful to their staff. But if you're using the individual version, then you can see inside each person's working life in detail and see what they really need help with to feel properly part of a working team. Either way, in an ideal world, your managers would be able to look at charts and just see what they need to do for each group and each individual. But not all managers are that keen on people management. Some aren't really people, and very few people think they have the time to do it well. So WeThrive does something else. It produces direct suggestions for conversations each manager needs to be holding, whether in the office or remotely. And these suggestions come directly from the things people said when they took the original survey, so everyone in the group's already primed to take part in working out what they need to do next. To give everyone a further helping hand, the action plans link through to the learning resources and action tracking tool, so managers can be ready with the help they need to bring about useful change, background material, videos, worksheets, lesson plans, and so on. And these are curated so that the resources you see relate directly to the issues on people's minds. Finally, you can use our action tracker to monitor what happens next, keeping tabs on who's doing what, by when, with whom, using what materials, and so on. And when that cycle of improvement is finished, then you'll probably want to go back with another survey to find out what's been done well and where further help is needed, because things don't stand still, they change, and new difficulties come along just in the nature of things. We want to help every manager become a super manager, a remote super manager, and we want to help organizations build a culture and environment where everyone can have a satisfying, productive, and meaningful time at work, wherever they're doing it. That way, there'll be fewer frustrations, people will stay longer, and the whole team will be calmer. There'll be less sickness as well. But more importantly, as we know from users' experience, productivity will also rise.